When I premiered my recent episode on Led Zeppelin's Baltimore 1973 show, the comments poured in, many claiming that the entire concert you see in The Song Remains the Same was faked in a movie studio. It's a myth that's lingered for decades, trying to discredit the film. Yes, some footage was shot on a soundstage, but the truth is far more interesting. You won't believe the logistics and reasons behind it. Even Adam Neely, a virtuoso musician I deeply respect and admire, talked about fake performances but used Earl's Court 1975 footage when discussing The Song Remains the Same. Sorry Adam, my Zeppelin fandom is on. I've touched on this topic before in my making of series, but today I'm diving deep into just this one subject, exploring this like I've never done before, and I found new things in the process. Today I'm going to show you exactly why these reshoots happened, how they were done, and why they make less than 15% of the final movie. It wasn't about faking Zeppelin's magic, it was about saving it. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a beginner in all things Led Zeppelin, welcome to a must-watch for any rock and roll scholar. So here's a quick recap. The band hired a film crew to shoot their last 3 concerts of their 1973 tour at Madison Square Garden, July 27th through the 29th. While they used several cameras to capture different angles, all of these could only shoot up to approximately 11 minutes of film, and this would later come back to haunt the production team. The idea for a movie was on, and 4 additional sequences were shot in late 1973, featuring all band members in their own planets and realities. A private screening of the film was held in March 1974, and the original director was fired as the band realized there were massive footage gaps in most of the songs captured at the Garden. Now, the crew did manage to film close to complete takes for Celebration Day, Misty Mountain Hop, and The Ocean, but these songs were discarded by Led Zeppelin from the final selection and released as bonus material on the 2007 and 2018 reissues. I believe The Ocean should have been in the movie. Now, Over the Hills and Far Away was almost used but discarded at the last minute. More on this track later on. So the songs they wanted to use had missing footage, but there was another major problem with the project. The New York movie crew didn't label the film cans as to what night the footage belonged to, nor put audio marks to know where the tracks began or ended. Led Zeppelin had all 3 nights recorded by a mobile unit supervised by Eddie Kramer, but synchronizing the music to the video portions was mission impossible. Jimmy Page and Peter Grant had to watch an endless supply of silent footage to know what song was being played, and worst of all, what version of all 3 nights these belonged to. John Paul Jones wearing different outfits on all 3 dates in New York was somewhat helpful for this, but still, what is a fairly easy job with today's digital technology was a tedious task back in the 70s. This was especially troubling for jams and solos. Some of these were just impossible for them to figure out. A new director was brought in. Peter Clifton had a tough job to try and salvage an incomplete film. He suggested more fantasy sequences be shot, including a mafia-style introduction, but his worst nightmare was to realize the original concert footage was shot in crappy 16mm instead of the much-desired 35mm, or cinema quality. Clifton went for a bold idea: reshoot their 1973 concert in 35mm at Shepperton Studios, London, complete with the same stage, clothing, hairstyles, sweat, everything. They could fill in the gaps for the missing video portions and mime their performance in specific places for continuity while keeping most of the original footage intact. Clifton was inspired by Genesis' Shepperton 1973 concert. Despite the band's initial refusal and bad experiences with lip-syncing on promo shots, in 1969, Zeppelin greenlighted the idea and hoped for the best. August 1974. Swan Song Records had been launched, and label proteges Bad Company toured America a month away from selling 1 million copies for their debut. You can watch my episodes here on the channel. Back in England, Led Zeppelin began day 1 of reshoots at Shepperton Studios, and things got off to a wrong start. John Paul Jones cut his hair and was no longer rocking his 1973 style, so the makeup department decided to put a wig, and what a wig it was. They failed to properly check the New York footage for a close approximation. What Jones got was a wig that stands out like a sore thumb, or a bad wig. John Bonham also cut his hair in 1974 and was also a bit puffier than previous dates in July. This is 73 Bonham, this is 74 Bonham, about a month before shooting. Some sources state he couldn't grow his hair that fast, so he may be wearing a wig as well, but at least it looks a bit more natural than Jones's. Jimmy Page's weight was pretty much the same as 1973, but his hairstyle was shorter than before. Same goes for his left thumbnail. Gone was that long pointy nail. Robert Plant looked almost an exact copy of 73, but you can tell his body mass index was slightly altered since the New York concerts. Also, he got dental fixtures, so bye-bye this right here. So all 4 bandmates and instruments were ready. The stage was set and the band had a projection screen in front of them where portions of the footage would be played and used as performance guidelines so they could match their moves at Madison Square Garden. They mimed their performance to live concert playback tracks, but remember, they didn't have in-ear monitors, but huge speakers in front. This is what they heard at the actual soundstage. Anyway, roughly less than 20 minutes of Shepperton's stuff were used in the final release, meaning these are non-consecutive portions with edits in between, including the bandmates' personal fantasy sequences. Here's a breakdown of every song on the 1976 film. Rock and Roll starts off with close-ups of Robert singing the opening lines, and you can spot Jones's wig. Hello wig. Once again, notice how the mirrors reflect the stage lights in ways the New York footage doesn't. Quick cuts to 1973 audience members and Jimmy Page try to fool the eye, making Shepperton not so obvious. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here's Robert Plant vibrating and stretching while Jimmy finishes his solo, rocking his 1974 vibes. This is a 38-second non-stop cut into an actual New York City angle where you can spot the lighting differences and Jones not wearing a wig. We get more bits of Robert trying to do his best to match the audio. A quick cut takes us back to MSG for the song's finale, with Plant matching his onstage moves for good continuity. Next is Black Dog, with 1 minute and 29 seconds of Shepperton footage. Being one of their most recognizable tunes, it's a shame the film crew didn't capture this in full back in '73. We begin with the band playing the Bring It On Home riff as introduction and Page going wild stuntman. We can spot Jones's wig yet again. Hello wig. John Bonham does a great job of matching his drum parts, and Robert's microphone makes it hard to read his lips, a smart move. Camera movement is subtle and stays on plan for obvious reasons. Next we see 1973 Plant spinning on stage before a quick series of cuts to 1974 Page, 1973 Bonham, 1974 shorter hair Page, 1973 Jones without a wig, this is his real hair. And then we get 1974 Bonham trying to mime the drum parts, and you can tell he didn't have a good time doing this. It's one thing to mime your singing and playing guitar to a backing track, another to drum your way through that. Quick cut to New York City before going back to more 1974 Bonzo, followed by 1974 Jones, matching his improvised bass lines to some extent. And there's a wig again. Hello wig. Last 2 shots of Bonzo's snare and a final cymbal crescendo cut to perfection back to the garden. This is pro 70s editing, manual editing, tedious editing. Since I've Been Loving You starts off with Jimmy and his rapid guitar intro. A smart camera choice allows Page to mime without a direct fretboard shot to see what he's actually playing. Cut to 1973 and the long thumbnail, but the audio doesn't match the visuals. More on that at the end of this episode. I'm not sure why they didn't shot this close-up at Shepperton instead. Page played this lick 1,000 times, so he knew it by then. Cut to Robert Plant's long note before going to the first verse, and then cue New York City. We see 1973 Jones without the wig, and then the wig returns as Jimmy turns away from the camera, trying to remember his wild solo run here. Notice the cut back to the garden. As much as they match the lighting colors, you can tell it's a different venue, but you never spot this the first time you watch the movie. We get a shot of Jumple Jones working out the keys to the sounds of Page's solo, a clever way to fill in the gaps and appreciate that wig. We get hand close-ups, and I'm not sure that's what the keys are actually doing, but then we have a nice cut back to New York City, and you almost feel it's the same concert. Total Shepperton time for this sequence, 1 minute and 20 seconds. Next is No Quarter, with just 35 seconds of Shepperton movie magic. We can see a quick shot of Jones and his wig playing his keyboards to almost sync perfection. Robert Plant battles through his onstage ad-libs, and then one last shot of Jones as the song concludes, while carefully hiding the rest of the band. There was no Shepperton stuff used on The Song Remains the Same, but they chose Robert Plant's fantasy sequence instead to fill most of the gaps. Same thing with the Rain song, with just 39 seconds of Jimmy Page playing the final section, a gentle guitar passage that you can tell by a couple of spots he's clearly trying his best to match the recording. It was a necessary gap to fill indeed, and a good chance to shoot the double neck in cinema quality. Okay, piece de resistance, the ambitious epic, Dazed and Confused. Clocking in at almost half an hour, it was obvious this would require the most Shepperton footage, with 3 minutes of material added onto the film. Like I said before, miming a performance to these spontaneous and almost jazz fusion jams was almost impossible unless you study these note for note if you're Mr. Jimmy or Steve Zozo, for example. I learned the No Quarter solo note by note and it was scary. So because this was a movie running on a tight schedule, it made sense to shoot close-ups of Page working out his Gibson Les Paul with a quick edit back to New York for reference. His expressions, including this daring spin, captures the intensity of improvisation, something Zeppelin was famous for on this very song, and the 1973 versions of this are probably the best. Back when I discovered this on VHS, I thought Jimmy moved like this all the time, but now I understand he was going for cinema motion out of not having to worry about the notes. We can also spot Jones's wig and Bonzo's cymbals before cutting back to the garden. Notice the superb lighting work at Shepperton that truly matches the 1973 setting. We gotta give it to the cinematographer, this is great work. Next, a 47-second sequence of Robert reacting to the music, an upside down camera angle on Page as he tries to find the right notes on the guitar. Plant comes back to vibrating mode, while Jimmy remains in rotary movie magic, playing with the audience perception of his unquestionable guitar skills. Now if you zoom in here, you'll spot a technician kinda tripping on Bonham's cymbal, which means Bonzo wasn't present on this scene, but there was drum lip sync going on. Again, it's almost impossible to mime this as a band. Jones was there, but it was maybe too much stress on Bonzo. Next is Stairway to Heaven, with about 1 minute of Shepperton footage based around Robert Plant's famous introduction in a perfectly lit sequence. The camera zooms in on him, cementing his legacy as a larger-than-life singer that remembers laughter when things get too serious. Notice the quick New York City cut to smooth things out. Being their most famous song, the original film crew managed to get most of it, so there was no need to reshoot beyond Robert's close-up shots, which means Jimmy's guitar solo here was live. No cuts, no edits, live. The photo finish ending was done at Shepperton, with Plant fading into black like a movie. Oh sorry, it was a movie. No Shepperton material was used on Moby Dick for obvious reasons. There's no way Bonzo is gonna mime to his drum solo. But maybe George Fludas from Bonhamology can. Check out his John Bonham birthday drum solo. Heartbreaker features a brief snippet of Robert singing, and that's it. Then finally we have Whole Lotta Love. We can see quick bits from Page and Plant, then Bonzo setting off the main groove before cutting to New York City. We get more close-ups from Plant, switching over to Page as he floats in Ice-T Les Paul mid-tempo grooving vibes, echoing Robert's rockstar delivery. Then we spot Jimmy's cherry red Les Paul. He switched just as the space funk section started, and he used this guitar at the Garden. Now in the movie, he magically goes back to his regular Les Paul for a long shot that, although Shepperton, it offers a glimpse into the band's onstage chemistry and Jones's wig, plus another outfit to match the New York footage from that specific night. You can see the Shepperton stage and lighting design, plus the 35mm camera visuals, which provide a higher quality snapshot than 1973. There's a funny moment here when we hear Bonham's cymbal, but he's still playing the hi-hat. Page and Plant rock the song's chorus, followed by Robert's long scream, with a quick cut to New York City for continuity. There's a brief Page and Plant blues duet, then a transition instrumental where once again Bonzo's not playing the right fills, but again this is how the band heard the audio at the studio. It was loud. Now Robert's woman ad-lib gets a call and response by the band in the most cinematic camera crane shot from the whole movie, courtesy of Shepperton Studios. It's a very Brian De Palma type of shot, capturing legends at work. It's one of my favorite cinema moments in Zeppelin history. They made a clever cut on Studio Robert back to New York Robert, and it's hard to tell the difference at first glance. Then there's the signature vocal cue leading into Bonham's snare countdown back into the main riff. It's hard to determine if Bonzo's wearing a wig, but that hairstyle looks suspicious. What do you guys think? We get more planned close-ups and then one last shot of the band from above. I personally think this makes for a great poster. Then we zoom in on the spinning lights and we're back to New York City, where you can visually compare both versions of the band. So what about Over the Hills and Far Away? It's definitely the song that had the most holes and gaps, judging by the number of edits we can find on the 2007 and 2018 bonus material. There is a lot of Shepperton stuff in here, spliced in with fast cuts of New York City from this and other songs performed at the Garden for a sort of music video edit. We can spot Jones's wig, of course. So there you have it, the complete Shepperton footage explained, but one last thing before you go. The final movie release had a different audio mix in post-production using parts from all three nights, which caused some audio-video mismatch in very specific places. This means the playback used at Shepperton was different from the movie and the soundtrack. If you want to solve this mystery, please check out my audio deep dives on previous episodes 3 and 4 of the series for a forensic breakdown of the actual cuts and edits for this. You don't want to miss it. If you enjoyed this one, stay tuned for the next episode covering Led Zeppelin's movie. This time we go to the legendary Pittsburgh show of 1973 and the untold secrets behind the footage that was captured there. Coming soon. If you like this research, you can consider joining my Patreon and support the research facility in full. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.